In this latest episode of the Longevity Lounge, we have Ben Woodward, the Vice President of North America in BEMER. Prior to working at BEMER, he has worked in senior level roles, working for multi-billion dollar brands and companies. He is a business owner himself and a best-selling author. And in this episode, we talk about entrepreneurship from the very beginning, his top tips for starting entrepreneurs and distributors, and what he has learned from his career experience on how to take a business with nothing and scaling it into a thriving organization. Let's jump into this episode. You guys are going to love it. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Longevity Lounge. Today we have the Vice President of North America at BEMER, Ben Woodward. Ben, thanks for joining us today.
It's good to be with you.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, Ben is also my dad, just by coincidence. So this will be a fun conversation. But thank you for joining us. I think you have a wealth of experience in this industry, within entrepreneurship. You started off in local markets, working for a multi-billion dollar company. You climbed the ranks within that company. You've started your own businesses, and now you're here at BEMER. Could you tell us a little bit about your early beginnings and how you evolved and reached this position that you're currently in?
Yeah, so I started out in the marketing department. Actually, I was a graphic designer when I first began my career, began in marketing, and was responsible for multiple countries in the European region of a small direct sales company at the time, and then kind of moved around different departments, which I think was really helpful to get exposure and experience in the functioning and requirements of different departments within a company like this. So I started out in marketing. And then I moved into general management. I worked with a big company called Amway and ran their UK and Irish market for a while. And within that kind of function, kind of moved into, or had responsibility, not just operationally for everything, but also really was heavily involved in training and sales and what have you. From there, I became a sales director for a European region for another company called Melaleuca. And helped run their European department there. Again, having exposure to different departments, different markets now. I think that was really great to get some more international experience there too. And then moved into another company as the managing director for their European region, and then onto global president. And I think all of that just gave me great insight as to the things that can go wrong, the things that you want to avoid. And I remember very early on when I was working in one of these direct sales companies a number of years back, getting some great advice from one of the top field leaders, actually, who became a good friend. And he said, if you want a piece of advice to really do a great job here, he says, just stop the mistakes from happening. And he said, it's a thankless job. People won't even realize half the time if you've even done anything at all, because you'll have prevented a crisis or averted a problem from occurring. He said, but that just frees us up to do our job. And if you can just do that, he says, that'll just clear the runway and make things smooth. And that's the big task, and often is just to clear the runway and give people a chance to do the bit that they love the most, in being entrepreneurs in an environment like this.
That's pretty cool. So you started off really as a creative, a graphic designer that evolved into marketing and then sales, management, leadership, and then international too. So that's given you a super broad perspective of so many different aspects of a business. Do you feel like that is what built within you a desire to be an entrepreneur, or was that always in you from the beginning?
It was certainly always with me from the beginning. Because I remember even as a kid, I was interested in entrepreneurial opportunities. And I've when I was younger, before you were born, right around the time that you were born, launching my own or starting my own creative agency. And that was a great opportunity there where I just expanded my graphic design skills and marketing skills and kind of moved into a business environment in a little different way. That was really exciting and fun. So I think I've always had that interest, but it's the big thing that is of interest to me. And it's actually interesting, something that my wife said. She said to me once, I was chatting to a friend of mine who said, it's interesting, Ben, because he'd known me since I was, before I was married. So going back over 25 years ago now. He goes, it's interesting, Ben, when you kind of started out and we were working together and I was a trainer at the time. And he knew me as more of a graphic designer and kind of that kind of space. He said, it's not interesting that you went on to become such an experienced businessman. And who'd have ever thought you'd have had a knack for business like you do? And I was relaying this to my wife a little while ago, and she challenged the point. She goes, I'm not sure if you're an actual businessman or not, Ben. I was like, what? What do you mean? What do you mean? She goes, well, I think you're a people person. And as a result of being a people person, you do well in business, right? And I actually find that is really true for this industry that I'm in, is at the heart of everything we do and what we're all about in BEMER is people first. So if you love people, if you are empathic for their journey and their experience, if you want them to have a great experience in every iteration of their interaction with us, then I think good business decisions come out of that as a byproduct. Right? I think that's a consequence of caring for people. So if anything, I think if that's where my intuition comes from, being exposed to lots of people's journeys, understanding their pain points and the things that they struggle with, right? And then genuinely wanting to resolve those problems and get the barriers kind of removed from the runway, so to speak, I think that's kind of the driving force.
Right. And I think too, kind of like what you mentioned, you being a people person, I think allows you to, and especially with your career experience, allows you to put on multiple hats. But for a distributor, for a major corporation or business, something like BEMER, when someone first starts out, they start to recognize, oh, there's marketing, there's sales, there's networking, there's operations, there's, getting the product and these things to these people. It might feel a little overwhelming to begin with, but they want to scale. So where do you think someone should start? They've just realized there's a lot of different roles to fill. From your experience, where should they start?
You start where you stand. That's the best piece of advice I could give. Is sometimes people come in, it's almost like having a GPS, right? And you know where you want to go, and people get very preoccupied with where they want to go, where they want to be. Obviously, that's the reason for signing up and becoming a distributor or a representative of BEMER in the first place, right? I've got goals I want to achieve. I've got people I want to help, an impact that I want to have. And so we can get to the end point first, but then you've got to reverse engineer. And I see it a little bit like a GPS. You put in your final destination, where you want to go, but you've also got to put your starting location. Where am I at right now? And there's a little bit of, that's the learning curve for most people. Is do we fully understand where I stand right now? We don't always have a keen awareness of our own weaknesses or vulnerabilities or inexperience. We don't know what we don't know, right? And so sometimes that can throw us. I can be great in one part of my life and think that transfers massively here. And then we find out that, maybe it doesn't, right? So it is a different experience being an entrepreneur. So I think starting where we stand is really important. Start with understanding what are my resources, what is the time commitments that I can give, what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, what are my time commitments, all that type of thing. How does that feed how I want to move forward and achieve my goals, what they look like, how does it relate, and then build out from there. And what I would say is, you raised an interesting point about you become an entrepreneur. So you put the sales cap on, you put the marketing cap on, you put a whole bunch of different caps on, customer support, problem solver, crisis manager, all those types of things. And one thing that I saw done really well with this one guy that I worked with a lot, he was an Irish guy from Belfast. Great networker, incredible guy. He was really good at knowing what he was useless at, right? And he wouldn't pretend either. I genuinely, I worked with him a lot, and he always had this little team of people that would kind of be with him, right? Like his henchmen, right? Maybe henchman's the wrong word. Sometimes it looked like bodyguards, right? He liked to create this persona. Fascinating character. Anyway, a really interesting character, but he knew if there's someone in the room, I can get you to join, right? If we're talking to someone, if I'm presenting and showing people this business, at the end of the night, they're in. right? Anywhere he went, right? When we were in a taxi together, he would sign up the taxi driver, right? It was impressive. When we were at a restaurant, he would sign up the waiter. He'd get their contact details, and he would just give these out as leads to the people in his team. So he was really great at that. But in terms of building a website, marketing and promotion, he knew how to fill a room, but he didn't necessarily know how to get the word out that way in terms of marketing skills and that type of stuff. So he would pull people in and say, hey, you're really good at this. You do this for me, I'll do that for you. And he built a team, kind of like how I've got in the office right now, right? I understand the importance of budgets and forecasts, and being fiscally responsible, but I'm not a qualified trained accountant. But we have qualified trained accountants in the business, right? I'm not an IT expert, but I do understand how our website should function and what services it should provide in terms of a user experience. But I'm not the expert in that, but we have people that are, right? And same with the other departments. I understand how we should lead people, but from an HR perspective, I have an HR manager. So sometimes it's about sitting down and going, this is what I bring to the table. This is where I'm standing. But maybe there are different skills that I need in my business in order for it to flourish. And then target those people, go after those people and bring them into your business. And maybe you can say, look, I'll make this an advantage for you. If you do this for us, we're going to build a team. Let's build this together. You provide this, I provide that, and we can help each other. And you'll be better off for partnering with me, and I'll be better off for partnering with you. It's an us thing, right? Because leadership isn't really about being the number one person in the tree, right? I learned very early on, I do not want to be the smartest person in the room. If I've hired a team of people around me where I'm the smartest, most experienced guy, something's wrong, right? My ego is getting in the way there. I love it when I can hire someone that's smarter than me, has more experience, that knows what they're doing in their particular function better than I do. It gives me wonderful peace of mind when I'm surrounded by geniuses and great experience. You can do so much more that way. Do the same in the field, right? When you're starting out, who are the great people that I want on my team, and then go after them.
Mm.
That's what this guy did, and he did a great job of it. To this day, I genuinely wonder if he could read or write. That sounds terrible to say, right? But I genuinely wonder. I'm not sure if I ever saw him write something down. He would always kind of pass it off to his different team members, kind of what he was doing there. Maybe I'm off the mark, right? But if I'm not, what a genius he is for accomplishing so much, because he knew what his vulnerabilities were and his weaknesses, but he leaned into his strength, and then he pulled other people into his team that could make up the difference between where he was weak and what they could bring to the table. It creates a full house that way. And as a result, he got a great team and he did great things. So,
Yeah. It kind of
yeah.
sounds like, I mean, you alluded to this kind of overall, this, I think everyone has a fear of ignorance or being perceived as ignorant. And sometimes that kind of manifests as, I don't want to show that I don't know a lot. Maybe I react by showing that acting as if I do, or not leaning into what you don't know as a solution to how can I become more competent at
Yeah.
selling or marketing. But based on what you've just said, you're saying lean into what you don't know so that you can become better at what you're trying to do and become more competent so you can be more successful.
Yeah. And this is so important, right? Because, I learned early on a great answer to a question. Because when you're in the field, which I've been, right? I've been on the corporate side, but I've also been in the trenches as a distributor myself. And sometimes people go, well, it's my job to have all the answers to all the questions because I'm the field leader. I'm responsible for my team. They're going to come to me. I need to know. And what if I don't? And we hold ourselves back because we diminish our image of ourselves, right? And that can be a hindrance, which compromises us. But I learned it's a really good thing to be able to say to people, that's a great question that you got there. I don't have the answer for that right now, but I do know where to go to get it, right? Because you're really demonstrating a couple of things. One, you don't have to know, because keep in mind, it's also a teaching moment. When someone comes to you for help as a leader, you're not just giving them the help that they need, you're also teaching them as well, right? When I was a training manager, I'll just put a pin in this for a quick sec. When I was a training manager, we had a training model that we used with our trainers, which was explain, demonstrate, practice, evaluate, repractice. That was the training model, right? So all the time when I was out there, when I was a trainer, I would use that model to train. But also when I was in the field, I used that to always be teaching and training when I'm with my team so that they could learn by my example and what I'm saying, not just by the answers that I'm giving, right? So back to your point, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to that, but I know where to get it. What we're showing them there is one, as a leader, I don't need to know the answers to all the questions in order to be competent and good at what I do. Two, you're a part of a team, an infrastructure of support that is a part of your business too, which gives you the ability to get all the answers to your questions, even if you don't have the answers right now. You just need to know where to ask. And what a great message that is for anyone that is new in terms of getting answers to their questions, and anyone that is a young team leader or organizational leader to know, hey, don't worry about it. You don't have to have all the answers. In fact, I had an experience once which really was a great eye opener. It was again my friend that gave me that advice that I referenced earlier. Stop the problems from happening, right? Yeah, that guy. He said he had a new guy in his team who had a question, called him up and said, hey, I'm brand new. I've got this question. I'm stuck on this. And he said what I said. He goes, that's a great question. He says, but you know what? I don't have the answer for that. Stay on the line a second while I call my sponsor, right? My leader, my mentor. So he keeps on the phone. He phones his mentor, who is also a very high-ranking leader in the organization too. He says, hey, I've got this new guy with me. He says, he's got this question. I don't have the answer to the question. Do you know what it is by chance? And he goes, good question. No, I don't. Stay in the line. Let me call my mentor. And so he calls his mentor. All right, so everyone's kind of connected. Everyone's on hold. He asks him the question, again, big leader, and he gives the answer to the question. They kind of refer all the way back to the young guy. And he says, is the answer to your question? And he goes, oh, fantastic. Thank you very much. He gets off the phone. Then this guy says to me, his name's Jerry. He said, Ben, let me ask you a question. Do you think I knew the answer to his question when he asked me? He said, I did. I did know the answer to the question. I said I didn't because I wanted to demonstrate two things. You do not have to have all the answers to be where I am. And two, ask and get help. You're a part of that system. He says, do you think when I reached out to my mentor, he knew the answer to the question? Yes, he did. But he was teaching the same thing because I'm following his example, right? He says, we did this to show him. Just ask. You're a part of a team. We've all got your back. You're a question away. And that to me is wonderfully reassuring to anyone that is starting out their business in BEMER, that you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to know everything and have all the experience that those that have been before you have that you haven't gained yet. Be on the journey, lock in, connect with your mentors, ask the questions. And if you don't have that mentor support that maybe has the answers, you reach out to me, you reach out to Mac, you reach out to our team, you reach out to customer support with Drew and the organization there. We're all here to help you out too. When you join BEMER, you have a whole organization of customer support, marketing, sales, leadership, you name it, all here that have you back and that are here to help, along with your mentors in the field to help you out as well. What a great start to any organization, to any business, to have all of that experience at your fingertips.
Yeah, yeah. I really like the message that you're sharing there because it kind of alludes to the principle of you don't need to know the answers, but if you know who to go to, that's probably all that you need. And it's true. And something interesting, kind of along the lines of marketing. I remember watching an interview, I think not too long ago, and it was of the YouTuber Mr. Beast. And everyone, I think, marvels at the insane engagement that he gets on all of his video content, his marketing, his material, his businesses. I mean, in many ways, he's just the king of YouTube and social media right now. He is phenomenal. And he gets people asking him questions all the time about how do I, get more leads? How do I scale my social media? How do I build more of an engagement and more of a community? And he has such a simple approach to it. He kind of described it as, well, if you knew what I knew, you would be able to do the exact same thing, but you don't know what I know. I'm here because of what I know. And that kind of taught me the value of, look, this is a competence game. Can I, like you were saying, let's lean into what I don't know, be okay with it, go to the people who do so that I can have that same knowledge. And in many ways, if we don't do that, like you were saying, it's just going to keep us stuck. And that seems like
Yeah.
the opposite of what we want.
Yeah. And that's why I'm grateful for the experiences that I've had with all these different companies and with my teams and what have you. Because one of the big lessons that gives reassurance now, as an entrepreneur and as a leader, is all of that time and all of those people that I've connected with shows you patterns, right? And you see, when you're brand new and you don't have the experience, you might move forward, take a number of steps, and it doesn't go according to plan. You don't know if that's right or wrong. Am I doing the right thing? Was that the right outcome? Was it not? Is that normal? Is it not normal? What's the best situation here? I don't know. Right. And that's the bit that makes people vulnerable when they're doing their own thing and kind of being an entrepreneur, is if they don't have the context of what success truly looks like. Right. And I think the benefit that I've been able to glean over the years is working with so many different people. Literally, I've traveled now to over 30 countries around the world, right? And many of them multiple times, right? So, and I've just seen time and time again what works, what doesn't, why, the typical pitfalls that people stumble across all of the time that get them stuck and so on. It's and when you get that exposure, that's often what teaches us, as well as our own experience, right? But yeah, I just want to rub shoulders with as many great people as I can, because that just accelerates the learning.
Mm,
You can learn the hard way and you can learn and try to figure it out along the way. But if you're partnered with great people, then you can get there faster. You can minimize some of that discomfort, and you can learn quicker. And I think that's a big help and a big plus in what we offer here in BEMER, I think.
mm. So, from your experience, you've worked with such a diversity of businesses, people starting out, you've networked yourself with majorly successful people. What would you say are some good starting points for setting the most appropriate goals? Because, as you mentioned before, obviously it's a process of not only trying to acquire the right knowledge and making sure you know how to position yourself, like you said, be where you stand, but how
Mm.
would you help someone start setting the most appropriate goals to set them up for success? Because obviously, everyone, when they start out, they're like, you want to be ambitious. You have this vision and this excitement. You've got, but as you mentioned before, there are multiple hats. You have to stand where you are. How would you help someone start setting appropriate goals to set them up for success down the line?
Well, it's interesting because you made an interesting assumption there that everyone that starts with big goals, right? Which is what you do, because you're a very entrepreneurial guy yourself. I've seen both things happen to extreme, right? I've sat down with people and said, okay, help me understand your goals. Let's kind of map this out. And they'll say things like, I want to build a school in Africa, build a hospital, and they go for massive, wonderful things, but they're going way big. And I'm looking at what they've done over the last number of years and what they're bringing to the table. Where do they really stand? And I'm going, these are maybe overly ambitious, right? So I've seen some big extreme examples where they go, I really want to. We've got this great product here, man. Can you imagine if we got that in front of the King of England? I had one person say that it was the Queen at the time, or get this into this product could be used with the military. I'm like, do you have connections with the military? No. Right. So, okay. Let's bring some realism here, right? So you got some extreme scenarios, but then I've had the other extent as well, where people are too afraid to dream, right? And they don't want to think too big or get too excited because they don't have confidence at the other level that they can do something. And I had an example just to kind of illustrate this that was really instructive. I mentioned when I was at Amway, I started out as the general manager for the UK and Ireland. I then became the business opportunity manager for the European region, which was a $1 billion region, 26 markets, a huge, very well-established organization. And I started doing some market research. I went to the top 5 performing markets in that region. and sat down with their top field leaders and interviewed them all, right? And why did you join? What was your motive? How have your goals changed? What do you see as the biggest challenges that you face as a leader with your teams? That kind of stuff, just to really understand their journey and the psychological journey of how they began and how they've evolved now that they're these big superstars in their organizations. And all of them said something really interesting. Because I asked them all the same question, right? Because I wanted to get some comparative answers. One of the questions I asked was, how have your goals changed and your vision changed now compared to when you started? Did you have the same vision when you began to where you're at now? All of them said no,
Mm.
right? All of them said, I didn't, yeah, I wanted to do better than what I was doing, but I had no comprehension in my mind that I could earn and achieve what I have earned and achieved now. That was just so far removed from my previous experience that I could never think this much or think this big, right? So what we see is our vision for many people is proportionate to their experience, right? Or it can also be proportionate to their pain point.
Mm.
I think both are true, right? So you do have people that go, okay, if I'm earning, let's say I'm earning $60,000 a year, just as a theoretical number. Wouldn't it be great if I could run my own business and earn $100,000? Yeah, that might be a big leap for some, but there are other people in the business that might be earning $300,000, right? And they'll go, oh, I can't even imagine that, right? I've got a friend that's making $1 million a month in his business and what he's doing, right? That's insane.
Mm.
That's beyond people's reach and in their own mind to comprehend that they could do that. But we don't start there. So I think when we talk about start where we stand, we need to look at, where do I feel I can go? And I kind of create a two-pronged approach with this. I want to have a vision that is my ambition. If I look at my ideal life, all right, let's start here. Rather than going, I just want to get to the next step, right? Let's think a little bigger for just a moment. If you had the ideal life that would make you the happiest, most productive, most meaningful, purpose-centered experience of your existence, what would that look like? Let's shape that, because sometimes we diminish those aspirations because we go, I don't think I can do it. I don't think I'm worthy. I don't think I'm capable. And we have all these reasons why we stop. And I go, let's just pause right there. How dare you? How dare you shortchange yourself? Think bigger, believe more, hope more, and then create a plan and get it, because it's your life. You can go out and make that happen. We live in a world, especially to those that are listening to this podcast, because this is primarily going out to people in North America. But we have an opportunity here where we can lay hold upon support, education, mindset, personal development, products, experience, team support, all that kind of stuff. We've got everything at our fingertips here if we want it enough. So let's start and really go, what does the best version of my life look like? And you'll probably find a huge gap. And so you want to have your vision for that, and then go, now I'm going to curve back, look at where I start, and then go, what's a meaningful next step? I've got goals for my life, for example, that are way up there, but I'm keeping my vision there, but my next steps I'm focusing on are here. Let's get to here first. And then when I achieve that, I can go to the next step. So you want to have some milestones where you say, I'm going to go from the 60K mark to the 100K mark, or the 100K mark to the 150K mark, or wherever it might be within your wheelhouse. Start there, but we've got to start from a vision perspective where we don't think unrealistically and say, my first goal is $1 million a month, right? When you've never done something like this before. Steady on, camper. Let's carve back a little bit. Let's get some perspective. Let's get some milestones and prove to yourself the next steps are wins. But at the other extreme, don't belittle your ambition and your potential and your future because of who you think you are. Right? That's the biggest challenge, I think, in entrepreneurship, is who we think we are, our belief in ourselves. I had a great mentor say to me years ago, he's like, Ben, he said, if I could part the veil and show you who you really are, you would rise up and never be the same.
Mm.
The big barrier for us is that we don't know who we really are. And when we start to grasp that, and that's what I love about this kind of business, is because as I lean into that and apply myself, it gives me a runway that is the best runway for personal development I could ever have. Because wisdom doesn't come from books, it comes from practiced experience, right? We can read great stuff. I'm a passionate, avid reader. I always have multiple books that I'm reading at any given moment. But it's what I do with that knowledge that turns it into wisdom. Wisdom is knowledge correctly applied, right? So it's not just what we know, it's what we do. And we can learn a lot from people that have read and are regurgitating other people's wisdom. But there is a nuance in that that you will never get if you don't do it yourself. And what they're missing out on if they're just regurgitating, right? You want to learn from people that are doing it, that have been where you want to be, and then get in the trenches yourself and do it. And that, interestingly, if we learn how to analyze and interpret that, that can feed our sense of self better than anything else.
Mm.
And what I'd say on that is the thing that it took me a while to learn this, right, is I was, when I was younger, I was very ambitious, very impatient, and very naive, right? And that's an interesting combination. But what I would do is I would always measure perfection over progress. And that was a stumbling block, because if it wasn't perfect, then it was a failure, right? And then when I really leaned in to going, no, I've got to do better, and it's taking longer than I thought, and this is not the journey that I was expecting. Well, what I learned was, in order to keep moving forward, you need to measure different things. You can't just measure perfection. You've got to learn to measure incremental growth and progress along the way. So we can say, yeah, an ideal outcome is that particular check, or maybe this many people that I've impacted, these types of lives that I've changed, and look at all those stories. But then you've got to get really into the grassroots and say, what does a great day look like? What does a great moment look like? What does a great phone call look like? What does a great interaction feel like? How do I get that better? How do I make that moment different? And you really get into the details and start to master each moment. And that's not saying you have to do it all at once. You know, I think we focus on today. What am I doing today to make it the best day possible? And then you lean into the details, you evaluate it, and you set goals to improve it the next day. Now, when I do that, I learned I can do this a bit differently. You lean in and you make a change.
Mm.
And I think what the benefit of that, the reason I share that, is that gives evidence to you that you can do it. Because most people will go, that sounds great, but I can't do that because, right? But if you start to evaluate and measure incremental wins, it gives you evidence in incremental ways that you're succeeding. And that gives you the reassurance, because you need the cognitive realization of the progress and the journey, but you need the emotional one too, right? And that is really important, because when you get those incremental wins that you can see and resonate with and connect with, it gives you hope. And if I don't have hope, I will not work.
Mm.
All of this business, when you're an entrepreneur, is self-directed. And if you don't feel that, if you don't have that conviction of hope, that I can anticipate something good, that's the definition of hope. If I cannot anticipate something good and believe in better times to come, better outcomes, better experiences, I will stop working. And therefore my goals will diminish, or I will go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right? So I have that hope, because that fuels action. Action fuels conviction, and it becomes a virtuous circle.
Yeah. It's when you shared that, it kind of made me think about fitness, because I'm a big fitness person, but I also used to train people. I was a personal trainer for a bit. And if you were to apply that kind of false logic of, because I do think sometimes we focus on the wrong measurements, or the measurements are too big, where it's like, oh, if I only ever track the client's progress or my own progress, say, for example, I'm trying to lose, I don't know, maybe 40 or 50 pounds, hypothetical, but I only measure in 20-pound increments. That's like that 4 months could go by where it's like, oh, this isn't working. I should
Yeah.
stop this. But it's like, Well, it might be if you changed your focus to measure 1 pound losses each week. And like you were saying, having your focus on the things that are trackable, that are reasonable, helps you know what's working and what's not. Kind of this kind of, you're gathering the data of like, okay, I'm putting this in, I'm getting this back. And you talked earlier as well about knowing what to focus on, how to track, and why you should track that, and why the focus on progress is so much more important than just perfection. But when someone is starting out, realistically, like someone's listening to this and they're thinking, okay, this all sounds great. I've got all this stuff, but what do I actually measure so that I know and I can feel confident that I am progressing to where I want to be? What would you say are some good metrics or things to look at for someone starting out?
Okay, so I'll break it down into two things. One, essential activities. What is my daily method of operation, my DMO, right? What are the things that I need to do on a consistent basis? And that is things, so that's kind of the first one. And I'll break that down into some different critical activities. First, I need to be building my contact list, right? We grow and thrive or fail based on the quality and dynamism of that contact list, right? So I would, that's a critical activity. Then I need to know how to approach people and how to set appointments. Then I need to know how to give a good presentation and actually connect with people in that moment. Then I need to know how to do good follow-up. How do I follow up in a timely and effective way? Then I need to know how to, be a leader by example in my own personal activity. What do I celebrate as well in terms of recognizing the successes of others? What does celebration and recognition look like for me and my group? So I've got those types of activities that I would say those are the key performance indicators in terms of what I am in control of. The outcomes I'm not always in control of. To some degree I am, but not 100%. I'm 100% in control of what I choose to think, feel, and believe, and how I choose to act. That's what I'm in control of. So I look at that, and then I can have some milestones in terms of the number of appointments that I set, the number of people that I talk to, the number of people that I put in my contact list, the follow-ups that I do. And you can put some goals and some numbers there in order to evaluate outcomes. But the other thing that I would add in terms of what do I measure is how well did I perform in each of those? So when I'm building my list, what does a great list look like? What does the great management of a list look like? Right? I had one person I worked with a number of years ago, owner of a multi-billion-dollar business, right? Incredibly experienced guy. And he would say there are only 2 times that you should ever not have your contact list on you as a distributor in this business. One, when you're taking a shower or a bath, and 2, when you're going for a swim. He said, aside from that, you should always have your list on you. When you don't, it's like saying my shop is shut. I'm
Mm.
closed for business. Now, I actually shared this on one of my fundamentals trainings a few months back, and someone put in the chat, actually, Ben, I'm going to disagree with you. I was in the bath just the other night, and I was working my contact list. You can do it in the bath, right? And so I think with technology, because a lot of us have our contact lists on our phones, then you know what? You can probably even do it in the bath as well. But it's little things like that. Do I always have my contact list with me? Am I recognizing the opportunities to connect with someone right now, today? What does that look like? And then when I'm giving an invitation or asking someone to make or keep a commitment, what does that experience look like? What does great look like in that capacity? So you define the critical activities that reflect your daily method of operation, the volume of that. What does the right volume look like in line with my goals, so that I'm not, because I've also seen that problem come out, right? Where people go, I don't know why everyone I'm talking to is saying no. I don't get it, Ben. What am I doing wrong? Right? And I said, okay, help me understand something here. When you say everyone, how many people are you talking to in a week? Well, like 2. Your numbers are off. You should be speaking to 10 people a day, right? At least, right? Your data is bad because your volume is bad. Right? So everyone can mean a very different thing when your numbers aren't right. So what does the right number of activities, well, what does the right volume of activity look like for each respective thing? And then just start to drill down and say, how do I become the master presenter? How do I become the master person at resolving concerns? That was one thing that I leaned into when I was younger. When I was 19, I lived in Australia for a couple of years, and did a lot of door-to-door sales type experience, right? And I found that those that really did well knew how to deal with objections really good, because you'd get them left, right, and center. And so I was like, I'm going to be a master of that. Whatever concern comes my way, I want to know how to resolve that in an authentic, real, meaningful, valuable way so that I can give maximum value to this person. And I worked on that at that age, and it's carried me through all of these years, which is awesome. Yeah, and I've used these skills that I learned then as a father, as a husband, and as an employer, and as an employee, and as an entrepreneur. It just applies across the board. That's the great thing, right? You master these skills, you master so much more than what you're achieving in your BEMER business.
Mm, I love that. And kind of in closing, I'm sure looking back on your own career, looking at where you started, looking at where you are now, I'm sure in your own unique way, you think to yourself, well, I never thought I'd get here either, but here I am. Somehow I'm here. If you were to give a message to, the up and coming entrepreneurs listening to this, maybe someone who was in your position or is in the position that you used to be in, if you were to
Mm.
give any message to them, to leave with them as they continue on in their own journey, what would you share with them?
I would say that your dreams are bigger than your problems, right? There's always going to be reasons to quit, to say it's too hard, to follow the crowd, to listen to the negative voices in your head, because the number one key to success, I believe, is persistence. Hands down. It's not knowledge. You can gain that if you're persistent. It's not experience. You will gain that if you're persistent. It's not even the people that you know. If someone comes in and says, yeah, if only I had that network, you will get that too if you're persistent. Everything that you want is at the other end of persistence, right? But what helps us to be persistent is that we value our goals and our ambitions, our outcomes, which is ultimately, for me, who I become, right? Am I having a meaningful existence as a contributor to this world? Have I left the space that I'm in now better than I found it, wherever that space is, right? That should be the goal, right? But my vision for that needs to be bigger than my problems. Problems and pain points will always get first priority for a lot of people because it's uncomfortable. I don't like pain. I want to escape it. I want to get away from it. I want to avoid it if I can. But true success and persistence comes from learning how to deal with pain, learning how to deal with problems, learning how to deal with setbacks, and having that right frame of mind to keep moving forward regardless. And why? Because our vision for the future is bigger than our problems. That to me is kind of the key thing. Be persistent, but I won't be if I don't have that vision and belief that what I want to become and achieve here is more important than that stuff.
Ah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing and for joining us and just giving us all this value and all this wisdom. We really, really appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure. It's always good to talk about.
Okay. Well, have a good one.
Thank you.